Hi. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure this out. I've always, okay, let me back up. I'm having a lot of thoughts. I really love hearing people's stories. I've always loved listening, and I always thought it would be fun to go around to like nursing homes or just place where older people exist and take a notepad or a recorder and just ask them about their lives and then compile all these stories into to a book or something, because I don't know, I just feel like there's so much fascination with the daily stuff of life lived and what we just can, like the gems you can extract from those stories and what can happen in a person when they retell a story, and the way, I don't know, there's something you just get to learn about that person in a way that's different than if you're just talking about the weather or sports, or you're, trying hard to like, I don't know if you're, these days I think about people who are creating content on social media. It's highly curated, it's highly planned, it's to achieve some goal. And I would love to just have people tell their life stories, like the different parts of their lives. And I don't even have to know the person. And it's fascinating. Just different stories. Isn't it fun to just listen to people's stories? And also for the person telling, it's just, I don't know, you get to, like when you tell a story, you get to relive that and kind of maybe learn something new in this moment about what you went through in that moment. So I thought about that, and then I was like, well, maybe I want to tell stories too. Just to see if there's, because like a highly introspective person wanting to always learn and grow, and what can be like when you think about, here's another reason I thought about maybe just doing little videos of like little stories. First of all, I don't have any kids. I mean, my cats, yes, but they don't count in terms of like passing on stories. They're not going to sit around someday and tell stories like, remember when mom told us the story? And like, so I thought, why? Well, the internet exists. I could put stuff out there to say, hey, I lived, and here's some of my life experiences, and here's what I learned from them, just to be part of this ever flowing river of humanity, right? So, which tends to happen if your genes get passed down along the line and stories get told. But even then, I'm not sitting around telling stories about my great grandparents, because I only knew one just for a brief moment in my childhood, and I didn't know her stories because our family didn't sit around and like share stuff from, like what was her life like? I wish I knew. And we didn't have the internet then, so she couldn't share it. So anyway, part of me is like, I want to be part of this, like, sharing. So, and maybe encourage others to do the same. And maybe wouldn't it be fun to just like tell stories? Like, I would watch people's videos of if they had stories to tell. Like, what if we just did little snippets, like storytelling time, like sitting around a campfire? Why can't we just have a virtual campfire, storytelling time? And like, kind of, what are we learning about the retelling? as the tellers? And what are we learning as the listeners that might spark inspiration for our own lives, for whatever we're going through? So, I don't know. Oh, what I was going to say is one reason why I thought to do this was I feel like more and more, the more I believe that all the things I've done that have felt so random in life, but you look back and you're like, oh, I see how everything was woven together to lead me right to this moment. So it's not just random, and it's not just coincidental. And maybe, if you want to even believe, like, we designed these things to happen in our lives, or at least the milestones to keep us on this, get us on this trajectory, then I am meant to look back more often and say, what was that all about? What can I keep pulling forward in terms of lessons learned? And if no one watches this, that's great. It's the act of going through the storytelling that I think could be really a lot of fun. And I think of it like poetry too. The more I just love writing poetry. I love reading poetry, but I love writing it. And whenever I, these days, want to write, I compose them in my head. And I actually speak them versus writing. So it seems like I'm in a phase now where I've transitioned more out of writing and more into like verbalizing and just thinking them. And I feel like that started to happen around the time of my ayahuasca journey back in 2023, because I think maybe this is the first story. Sitting there lying there one night in one of the journeys, it was like a 7-night period, 4 journeys through the course of a 7-day period. And each night, especially one night in particular, I can't remember which one, I'd have to go back to my journal. And I remember laying there being like, I am composing poem after poem in my head. And I'm like, I'm totally going to remember these. They are that profound. Do you think I remember them? No. But in the moment when everything is so clear in those journeys, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to totally remember this. All I remember is that it was really profound, at least in that state of mind. If I had written it down and I go back, I honestly wonder how profound it would be. But anyway, I feel like I've moved through a phase where things are more verbal, which is an opening for me because I have been more reserved, more hold back, more process, slow down, process through writing. And now I feel like I'm able to get to the truth of how I really feel more honestly through like what comes out, and then how do I feel about what's coming out? How does it resonate or not? And then I'm like, nope, that isn't how I feel. I know it's like more immediate. By the way, what you hear are my husband and his youngest son playing music together, which is so cool. He wanted to come over and play music, and so my husband plays trumpet and his son plays saxophone. So that's the backdrop to today. Oh, my tea's gone. So anyway, that's what I thought is to maybe kick off a little storytelling. And it also reminded me, like, somebody asked me something. We were having dinner with friends last night, and they asked me something, and I told the story about it. And my husband looked, he was driving, he looks in the rearview mirror, and he's like, I never knew that about you. And I was like, yeah, we've been together 12 years now, and you can still learn new things about people, because I feel like sometimes our stories where the paths are worn, like we have these stories we just tell people that kind of sum us up in a nutshell. You know, they're easy to tell, we remember them more. And some of them you just pull out of the archives They come out of nowhere and nobody's heard them. And part of me wants to rediscover my life. Like, it's 47 years, and maybe I will unearth stuff that's hidden, like hidden memories, even suppressed memories. And that's part of this self-discovery that I still want to go through, is like, we are endless, fascinating individuals with, like, we've lived so much life, and each, like, every little piece of the way is a story. And yet you can even deepen that by reliving the story and being like, well, what did I learn? Why was I going through that? Why did I design that journey for myself? What was it all about? And so that's kind of why I feel like maybe it's time to start, whenever I feel like telling a story, just turning on this camera and talking to you and seeing like what comes out. So, oh, I just turned 11:11. I like that. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to maybe, I was trying to remember this story about yesterday that my husband didn't know, and I've totally forgotten it already. Must not have been that important, but it'll come back when it's meant to. One thing I did, for some reason, came to mind, and I thought maybe I would relive it because maybe something important to be learned by myself about it was, I think it might be kind of profound for me, not for anybody else, but maybe it'll spark something for you too. But it's this idea that I'm realizing that it's come up a couple times recently, this idea of like, when we are not physically well, it has this dramatic impact on our overall outlook on everything. Like, our physical wellness is probably more important, more influential than we might realize. Or maybe it's just because I've been fortunate enough to not, and having undergone like significant chronic illness throughout life. I just remember one time being really, really ill in a foreign country all by myself. I was living in China, and I don't know what I had. I thought I was dying. I really did. And I was all alone in my little apartment, and it was on a weekend where I didn't have access to my coworkers. I worked at a school, and I had one coworker who knew English, and he was out of town. And so he wasn't readily available, and I didn't want to bother him. I think he was at a wedding or something. I felt terrible. I held off all day to contact him because I didn't know enough Chinese to navigate a hospital setting. I could navigate the farmer's market. I could buy my own groceries. I could feed myself. I could do enough in a restaurant to point at a menu. I could eventually say enough words, but this was like a few months in. I didn't have all the vocabulary yet, and I don't know what I had. I still don't know, but it was awful, and I've never felt that sick in my life. And by now I was in my mid-30s, so I'd lived enough life to, like, you'd think, be sick enough where you're like, oh, I've felt a lot of different sicknesses. Well, I have no idea what it was. But I was laying there, and I thought I was dying. I really did. And that's not being dramatic. I really thought, because I was in a foreign country, different climate. It was like tropical. It was like so hot and humid. And I thought, is this some tropical illness? Like, did I get infected by some virus or some bacteria or something like way foreign to my system? I felt like my spine, like it was in my spine, like I wanted to crawl out of my skin. like my body. I was laying there, and I was like, I finally worked up the nerve to text my coworker and be like, I'm so sorry. I think I'm dying. I'm so sick, but I don't want to bother you, but I think I need to go to the hospital. And then he didn't respond for a long time. And in that meantime, I took out a pen and paper, and I'm lying on my bed trying to write. And I was writing like a will. I was like, it was like that dramatic, that bad. And I'm not usually a drama person, drama queen. But I was like, I actually might be dying, so I better write some stuff down. And I don't even remember what I wrote. I kind of wish I still had that will. It was just like, oh, I was probably in some delirious state of mind, severely dehydrated, like just blah. So I just remember, like, I thought I was dying, and finally he replied, and he didn't come back early, but on his way back in town later that night, or that afternoon, I think it was still light out. I lived in the southernmost province of China, which is this island called Hainan off the southern coast, and very tropical, right at the equator. Just like melt your bodies, like it's just so miserable. And he picks me up because luckily he had a car, and luckily he was from Ghana, and he just spoke beautiful Chinese. He'd lived there a long time, could speak English and Chinese. He navigated me through the banking system, getting a cell phone. He was amazing. The only person who could speak English and Chinese. So he was like clutch. So he picks me up, and I could barely get myself down my elevator, off my bed, down the elevator. Oh, I didn't have an elevator, sorry. Down the stairs. There was an elevator. I think, yeah, there was an elevator, but it never worked. I think that was the problem. Yeah. So anyway, I get down there, and he takes me to the hospital, and I think I still never found out what it was, but they hooked me up to all these IVs and started putting stuff in me. And I was just like, I was just in like trust mode. I'm like, well, I'm going to die anyway. I don't care what you put in me. And they did. They just, in those hospitals, they have like rows and rows of chairs with like IV stands, because it's very common, I guess, to get dehydrated and need all kinds of fluids. So I think they just stuck me there and just like started pumping me full of stuff. I think I got a shot in the butt of something. I have no idea still today what went in me. And then sent me home with these pills, and I was like, okay. And I was taking them, and then I finally came back around to the point of like maybe it was the next day. I survived the night. I came home the next day, or woke the next day, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll start to Google what these medicines are. And I start looking them up, and they were like intense, like you take them when like you're at death's door kind of medicine. And it's like the side effects, like what it does to your system, is almost as harmful as whatever's happening to you by not taking them. So I'm like, holy shit, should I be taking these? Like, it's like gonna ruin this organ and this organ. So I was just like, I still today don't know what that was all about, other than it made, like, since then I've thought about it. Whenever I have felt really ill, it's like nothing else in the world matters. It like takes me back down to zero of like, nothing else matters other than getting well and focusing on health, because this body is all we have to get us through life. Like, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something, where you're like, okay, physical health and well-being and safety and all of the foundational stuff, and then it's like, then you can work on higher level things, to the point of where you're like, hopes and dreams, and here's what I want to do with my life. Well, none of that matters if you feel like you're dying, or if you're in chronic pain, or if you're suffering from this debilitating illness, or if you have physical limitations that just keep you in this state of like life, just getting through life is really hard. So it really, I think, gave me this gratitude for physical well-being. And sometimes when I get out of the state of working on well-being, like exercise and nutrition, then I'm like, what am I doing to myself? I know that if I don't have that, I get, and then it gives me so much respect and humility. So like when I think about my clients who are dealing with all sorts of things, even mental unwellness, which feels very physical, right? It's just, it gets me in that state of like, where before all of that, in my family, there's this like, suck it up, buttercup, and like push through, and like, I can do it, why can't you? There's this like rugged individualism and like push and like physical whatever. And it just really, I think, gave me that humility. It was like whoosh, it knocked me down. I really thought I was dying. Really did. And I hadn't felt that before, and I haven't really felt it since, except one time I got the flu or something, and I couldn't peel myself off the bathroom floor. My now husband like had to come over and like lift me up to my feet and help me upstairs to the bedroom and give me a bucket and put me in bed and everything, where I was like, I can't get off the floor. But I knew I wasn't dying. But then in China, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally dying. I'm going to write my will. I literally wrote out a will. How ridiculous is that? So anyway, I think maybe that story was the first one to come to mind, because I've thought about that a couple times lately, and maybe it's because I've had client interactions lately where the physical is so bad that nothing else matters. We can't think about higher level stuff. We can't think about spiritual stuff. We can't think about our goals, our hopes, our dreams, our personal growth journeys, which I'm all about. Peeling back the layers, healing old wounds. None of that matters. Physical unwellness brings us so present into right now, and almost paradoxically wanting to resist the now, because that's where our pain is. Isn't that interesting? So maybe that's the little nugget I'm learning. There's something weirdly paradoxical about all that matters is right here, right now, this, and yet this is too much to deal with. It hurts. I can't figure out my way through it. It's almost like you just have to move through it. And what are we learning along the way? Don't take anything for granted. Every moment is so precious, right? Everything. And when our loved ones, I'm getting a little emotional. I didn't expect that. When our loved ones are going through things, maybe because I have loved ones going through like very physical, like, yeah, that's probably what it is, because I'm thinking of my mom and her brother, my uncle, who are not well. And it's how do we be there for them? Because it's not like you can say, oh, everything's gonna be okay, because honestly, it might not be, and it's probably not, and meaning they probably aren't going to find their way back to wellness. This is, when it's so far gone and you're older at that, where it's like, these might be your last few years if you're lucky. How do we help our loved ones through that time? I guess I've been fortunate up to this point where I still have my parents, my grandparents, just sort of, I was too young to really help them, like be there for them. They had their kids, help them. I was kind of on the periphery of that. So, but now, in that phase of life of, okay, now my parents are going through those times. So I think maybe that's another reason physical health is top of mind. So how do we be there for them when you just want them to do the things that'll make themselves more well? Like, all, whatever it is. Like, for my particular situation, maybe stop doing the things that are making you unwell, and maybe that'll help prolong the life that you have left. But how do you, people are going to do what they're going to do when we, keep doing their habits or addictions, and it's hard to stand by and watch that without saying, hey, why don't you stop doing that? But I haven't said that. But it's like, you just have to kind of be there for them. And what's that mean? Show up. Be a presence. Be supportive in whatever ways we can, I guess. Because it's probably, if I were in their shoes, it's probably hard enough. Like, if you feel like, well, maybe I do only have a few years left, and maybe you don't feel like it's worth all the effort to do the things to make you healthy, because it's like, it doesn't feel maybe possible or worth it to, it's like, well, maybe it's pessimism. I don't know. I just think all these thoughts, like, it must be really hard. And so, yeah, just show up and be there for them. And it's hard to watch it from the outside, but it's probably even harder to be going through it when like, your physical unwellness is to the point where, yeah, you can't think about the other stuff. Like, oh, I want to think about, like, goals, aspirations, dreams, creativity. I think that's what it boils down to, like creation energy versus survival energy. And so, yeah. Anyway, it is kind of a downer of a topic, but it's also like, what can I learn from it? I think humility is a big one, and just, we're all on our own journeys, and just supporting, like, meeting people where they're at. Like, if somebody when I thought I was on my deathbed writing out my will, and somebody was like, would have been like, oh, it can't be that bad. Why don't you, like, write a poem or create a painting? That'll make you feel better, like creation energy, like, or dream, like, why don't you want to read a good book or something, think about philosophy or whatever, I love to do. I'd be like, STFU. No. I'm dying, and all I can literally think about is the pain I'm feeling and how my outlook is so grim and dim. No, none of that is even a possibility anytime soon. So that's where the humility, I think it really brought me back to like really just trying to meet people where they're at and saying, you know what, it's okay. Let's allow that to be here right now. I try to do that with clients now, and it's as hard as it is, that's been a learning journey for me, coming from a place of family conditioning. I'm just like, well, I can do it, why can't you? It's easy for me. Should be easy for you. And now when I hear people have that mentality in life on social media or whatever, I just laugh because I'm like, oh man, I had that in me at one point. And I sometimes if I feel it bubbling up, I'm like, oh, I thought I squashed you. I thought I got rid of you. Darn it. Sometimes it's still in there. Like when you get frustrated from people you really love, it's usually people like who you know like can do better. It's usually coming out of a place of like, what is it coming out of a place of? I think underneath it all, it might be fear, actually. It might be like, oh man, I don't want anybody to hurt. I don't want to think about unwellness in anybody. And vulnerability, it's like the fear of vulnerability is where I think it comes from in my family conditioning. Like they're not good with feeling vulnerable in certain parts of my family. And so when you feel physically vulnerable, that's like a sign of weakness, right? No, can't have that. And so we don't like to see weakness in other people either, because it like reflects our own vulnerability, doesn't it? So, and we don't, certainly in our loved ones, the people, our closest loved ones, we don't want to see them vulnerable. Yeah. I think it comes down to fear, the fear of our own mortality and the fear of no one gets out alive, right? And I think what's hard is when the exit is not pleasant and when it's drawn out and painful and angst-ridden, and nobody wants that for any of our loved ones. So these are hard topics. We're starting off with a bang. But yeah, like I said, it's pretty relevant lately, and I think that's all I had to say on that. I think I learned a few things by reflecting on that, which was the whole point of storytelling, right? So anyway, if you want to tell a story, send me your video. I want to hear stories, like a virtual campfire. Let's just share. That's what this is all about. Not curated, like polished content. Aren't we over that? Like the polished, highly edited content. Some of it's funny. I'm not saying I don't watch it, but I really love the raw stuff and real sharing. So please share your stories with me. I think someday I'm still gonna go around to nursing homes and ask old people, I'll be like, tell me your stories. What were you like? What was World War II like? I don't know. Or just like, but yeah, what were your relationships like? What do you wish you'd known? Or what did you, I just want to know the little insignificant stories, but yet they're significant. Like, yeah. Like, who were your neighbors when you were growing up? What were they like? What did you think of them as a little kid? Like, I don't know. What did you love to do as a little kid that you could do forever? And like, I want to see their eyes light up when they tell those stories. So anyway, yeah, real sharing. So that's all. That's all. I don't know what I'm doing. That's all. But I'm glad you had the backdrop of this jam session going on upstairs. I love it.